So, this is the panel about where have all the venues gone. I'd like to just maybe posit a counter-argument to that and say, actually, Cambridge is absolutely thriving at the moment. There's loads of venues. There's more than there's ever been. Cambridge is very lucky. However, nationally, I believe in 23, there was 125 venues closed across the country. Last year, venues reported, or rather 40% of venues reported that they were going to lose money that year. So it's quite a sort of dire kind of scene outside of Cambridge. I think Cambridge is actually, to be honest, doing okay. Sounds a bit weird. And I know that when you're in a band and you're trying to find your first couple of gigs, you probably think, oh, there just aren't enough venues. We're just not getting anywhere. And maybe Ian can help a bit with that. But and that's probably always going to be true wherever you are. But I think, yeah, I'd like to posit the opposite thing for Cambridge, but nationwide, yeah, it's a bit troubling. Who wants to go next? Oh, yeah, national perspective, I guess, from a promoter. Yeah.
Does this work? Yeah, go on, mate. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Hashim Ali. I am a promoter and booking agent, originally from Glasgow, but I'm now based in London. I started at quite a young age, at about 15, which is quite young for a promoter, to be honest. And it's sort of grown from there. I've become a booking agent, working in a very specific field in electronic music. And I think, you know, it was quite interesting for you to mention Cambridge in particular. The two markets that I would say a specialist in would be London and Glasgow. And both of those cities have very unique problems. So I'd love to talk about the nuances of that as we get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've run an independent festival and I also do tour driving for a living. So I get to go around and see all the venues around the country quite regularly. They are all struggling, and you know, when I'm out and about on tour, there's a lot of buzz about, for example, the 6-6 in Cambridge, about how successful it is, how the shows always look super busy. But like, knowing the guys personally, they are still losing money on a regular basis, and they're staying open through funding and everything else. So it's like, even successful venues are struggling. I think, you know, the idea of taxing arena shows, you know, a small amount to contribute to smaller independent venues, definitely a way to go, and probably more like tax things and grants from local governments should definitely be campaigned for. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of venues, Boom Leeds just closed down because someone just bought it to turn it into flats, and that sort of stuff needs to be illegal because, you know, small bands cut their teeth here, and like, we wouldn't have festival headliners that we have if it weren't for the tiny venues that start people out.
Great. Simon, as a promoter, you don't just promote in Cambridge, do you? You promote across East Anglia.
That's right, yeah. I promote mainly in Cambridge, but I also do Norwich, Bury St Edmunds, and a few other places in the region. My experience is that last year was probably the worst I've ever seen in terms of numbers, which has eventually led to sort of slightly fewer bands touring last year. Seeing slight signs of an upturn this year, but I think I would agree with your point that, yeah, we've been lucky in Cambridge. We've been in a bit of a bubble, and while we've lost venues, we've gained them again, like the 6-6, which used to be a venue back in the day, the boat race, which is how I know Richard. But yeah, nationally, it is pretty grim, particularly when you get to sort of, when you go further up north particularly, it's where sort of maybe the job market isn't as strong as here. It's definitely difficult.
So Ian, you are the other end of all this, because we're all kind of busy business type people. You are an artist, so how is it for you?
Yeah, so I'm the slight anomaly on this panel because, as Richard says, yes, I'm not a promoter. I am an artist, independent artist, based in Cambridge, and but I think it's testament to Cambridge and kind of the music scene that does exist here, because I've lived around here all my life. I'm 44 now. And I've been gigging in Cambridge since I was 16, and I've managed to build, since going from being a session drummer for over 20 years, I now front and play keys in my own band. And it's my experience within Cambridge that's allowed me to gain quite a large local following now. We've gone from the band's conception 4 years ago, playing very small gigs at places like the Raza, to selling out the Junction 2 in a matter of kind of three and a half years or so. But that is, and I won't go into all of it now, but largely down to the opportunities that this city actually does have. Just on a very basic level, any of you who are, just do a little show of hands, who's an independent singer-songwriter? Yeah? Okay, so play the guitar? Anyone play the guitar? I don't, but all right. So even if you play the keyboard and you get a light keyboard, Cambridge, you don't need a license to busk, okay? You don't need a license. You can walk out there in that city and set up anywhere you like and sing people your songs, okay? It doesn't cost you anything, just your time. That's one very simple way of starting to gain an audience and a following. I won't elaborate too much on it now, but that's just one very simple way you can do that in this city, okay?
Yeah, great. Obviously, there's a load of singer-songwriter nights across the city as well. So it is worth investigating the local scene and knowing where they are. I'm not sure, actually. Like, you'd probably have to do a bit of research. I don't think there's any central base now of information that would tell you exactly what's on, when and where. And I think that's probably something we could do within the city. That would be quite useful, I think. But the trouble with those websites, I won't go into it too much because it's a little bit dull, but you then end up spending, probably a day updating each of those different websites with your gigs, and it can be a little bit of a chore. So let's just assume though that as an artist you start to create a bit of a vibe in Cambridge, and you're starting to do really well. You're probably pulling in 100 people down to Portland, you're probably playing the Blue Moon. You might be doing the odd support act with Simon when he's getting touring bands in. So it's like, what's your next step after that? How do you kind of, where are the venues after that? I think that's probably would be quite useful information. Like, how do you break out of your hometown? Any ideas?
So I've just launched a band sort of a year and a half ago, and we started our first show at the 6-6. We've been attending there for 2 years as just punters, so we sort of networked with everyone, just been there on a day-to-day basis, just checking out everyone, and that kind of created a bit of a buzz for our launch. But yeah, we've managed to sell out 3 shows there since starting as like a first time Cambridge band, and like I think seeing that happen made me realise it was scalable across the country. So we've kind of gone out and worked with promoters really closely, and whenever we've had an opportunity, we've made a real effort to like really promote their show so that they get their money's worth out of us regardless of what they're paying us. And then every time we go back, it's sort of bigger and better every time. I think just a lot being a promoter and an artist. As a promoter, I had a lot of artists say, it's the promoter's job to promote the event, not ours. And I felt that was quite a bad attitude to have as an artist. I think you should take it into your own hands to promote your shows. Like, you want people there just as much as the promoter does, so there's no point you going and playing. So I think learning to, sell tickets as a band is quite important. And like, I really feel that every independent artist should at least once try hiring a venue and running their own show, just to learn the inner workings of how it works, and learn how the business works, take a loss, learn the hard way, and get better and stronger from it.
Yeah, it's good advice, absolutely. And also, you can pick who's going to be on the bill with you. If you book a slot down at Portland or on the Blue Moon and book a night, it's your night. You can have who you want on. Yeah. And you can start to create your own little scene around what you're doing and what your music's like.
So we've been running all dayers at the 6-6, bringing all our friends from around the country, and then we're going out and touring with them and playing their hometown shows. And it seemed to work quite well to have a reciprocal relationship where we're sort of doing each other favours, bringing each other for busy shows. Do you know what I mean?
So you're doing like swaps. So
yeah,
Norwich
kind
band,
of, but
you
not.
swap with
I'm not
them,
like
or?
specifying that. That's we genuinely just want to see our friends do well in our hometown, because we know we've got a bit of a buzz here. So we're happy to bring our mates and sort of let them enjoy and experience Cambridge and play to new people. But like, if they want to then offer us to go out, we will always do that. Do you know what I mean? But that's not the intention. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I think being genuine with building the community is number one, rather than doing it for any nepotistic reason, sort of thing.
It's really similar to how I kind of started off in Glasgow. When it comes to getting those kind of, bands from other cities that were quite a bit more well established in the scene, what we would do is, we played their bands ourselves. We kind of offered, like, if you can come up, would you be able to, have us on in, let's say, Leeds or Nottingham or whatever? And chances are it was very reciprocal. We would all kind of end up playing each other's shows, and before you know it, you've actually built a touring circuit. And when you have that touring circuit, all it does, at a certain point, you can kind of almost vouch for other bands that you sort of believe in, and they fall into that circuit. But again, that was like a very DIY approach that we all had, because, like you said, the people who were the promoters were also playing within bands, and that can extend it even into some club nights as well as I got a bit older. I think the issue now, that's kind of fallen to the wayside because a lot of those smaller venues in places like Nottingham or whatever have kind of dissipated. I think you just mentioned Boom in Leeds. So I remember playing there when it was called the Temple of Boom, originally when it was rehearsal studios. And, just seeing the amount of issues that they've had with, construction or like planning permissions kind of interfering with what they're trying to do. And it's all those little things are kind of popping up across the country where it feels now that those kind of touring circuits have kind of fallen by the wayside. When I was 16, 17, I could kind of quite easily have blagged a 5-day tour over a week. I don't think that's possible these days, or if it does, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, that's really rather depressing. Actually, that is really rather depressing. Simon, have you work with a lot of bands that go up and down the A1 and M1, don't you?
Yeah, I'd say the main problem we've got at the moment is, as a music industry as a whole, has become a lot more micromanaging. And I find now, whereas 20 years ago, I could put local bands on supporting national touring bands, I put on Ian's old band supporting Editors and various other bands. These days, they want to control who's supporting. Even if it's a local support, they want to approve everything. And we've had situations where we've been chasing for them to approve, and it's taken until the week before the show, at which point you lose a load of marketing time. So that has killed an awful lot of ways of getting local bands out to new audiences in the city. I think, the DIY route that you guys have spoken about is exactly what I would have said as being really the way to go these days. I feel like the music industry has forgotten that we need to work on getting new acts on and support them, because every single band was a local band once, wanting to be that first band on a Tuesday night, and it's ridiculous. It makes my job harder. It makes it harder for bands. It wasn't always like this, and I've had agents say, "Oh, we always did approval." No, we didn't.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, the role that national promoters play within the music industry. I mean, 20 years ago, national promoters were really only doing the kind of corn exchange, junction-sized venues, and now they're certainly all over the Portland Arms. They're doing, even the Blue Moon. It's and what that does is it squeezes out opportunities for people to do their own shows in their own town and to build their own audiences. Do you think you've fallen victim of that, the national promoters, and trying to get support slots with bands? Because obviously one of the best ways to develop your band is to be on the same stage as a band your music's a bit like, then you can nick their audience. That's kind of the whole thing.
We have fallen victim of that, but I've also been successful in utilising that as well. So it's a bit of both for me. Recently, I understand totally what Simon's saying, because I'm always, this is another bit of advice to anyone as an independent band or artist, I'm always trawling through the local big venues to see what's on and to see who's playing. Is there anyone that sounds like my band? Is there anyone that sounds like us? Can we support someone? Can I go out as me just solo and support someone that's relevant? And you have to just put in that kind of time and those kind of hours in order to start making the connections. But yes, it is becoming harder, because a lot of the time record labels have it all sewn up as to who is, going to go out with you. But that isn't always the case. And you know, like developing any kind of band and developing any kind of audience, it takes a long time. If you just want to stick some videos on an Instagram profile and expect everyone to find you, it's not going to happen. So you do have to go out and do things slightly differently. And I think what's interesting about the industry is, as much as things do get sewn up in certain ways, there's always, we're ever evolving. You know, there's always ways around it. And go back to the busking thing again. A band that I was in years ago, we were known for doing that around the city, and we created a massive following just from doing that. So we decided that we weren't going to go and just play in the random venues. We just go and play on the street. And it was that kind of vigilante kind of street performing that actually got us more well known. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that that's the answer to everything. It isn't. But it's thinking outside of the parameters. You know, if you can't get a support slot, yeah, put on your own night. Hire the venue. Get a bunch of bands and a bunch of people you know. Support each other. A lot of people, from my experience, a lot of people really, you know, you go and you want to put on a gig and you want people to come, but you don't go and watch anybody else. Like, you need to be part of the scene to be part of the scene, if that makes sense. You need to support other people and get them together, and you start to create your own scene. That kind of, you know, that spreading kind of vibe, and then that can spread to other cities. And I think this is sort of what you guys are talking about with the touring circuits that you can have, because these things do all exist, but you've got to join the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing I think that's happening at the moment that people are feeling is that people are buying tickets really, really late. And that is really affecting the whole scene. So if you see a band that you like, that you think you're going to go to, just buy the ticket. Don't wait until the week before. I think there's a bit of COVID-iness going on there, but
yeah, there was definitely a change post-COVID. I think people got in a habit of expecting events to cancel. But yeah, running an independent festival is quite stressful when you're trying to make 60% of your budget in the last month, and you've got to have everything paid, a year in advance. Do you know what I mean? That's quite a lot of pressure on one person to fund an entire festival when all you need to do is sell 1,000 tickets. Everyone's got a small stake to put in, but when you're covering that yourself, that's very hard. So if there's any independent festivals out there, definitely buy your ticket as soon as they get announced. Doesn't matter what bands they have. They might not have the lineup you want, but if you support them, eventually they will get it. So I feel if you believe in the idea of the festival, just support it regardless. I think, yeah.
I sort of do have a bit of sympathy for the punters here.
It's all the agent's fault.
Yeah. I think what I want to ask is, how many of you go to a gig or club night maybe more than, or roughly about once a month to once every 3 months? Can I get a show of hands? Or how much would you spend if you're going, let's say, out, let's put it into a bit more context, to a rave or a club night. How much are you expecting to spend, excluding the ticket, but from when you leave the door to when you come back? How much are you spending these days, aside from the ticket? Yeah, and that quickly becomes 200, and that quickly becomes a flight to Greece. And, so, from a rational consumer's perspective, it's right, okay, the tickets can be, 15, 20 quid, not too bad. But everything that goes around it now is increased massively. And the sympathy that I do have for punters now is committing that amount of money is a lot for a night out. And, state of affairs in the country, it's going to kind of, going on those kind of nights out, whether it's a gig or a club night or whatever, it slowly falls down that list. So, and I think that's also a factor of okay, can I justify it? I think naturally the economic conditions here has kind of created that moment of impulse purchases late on, and that's not something any of us can really fix. It's the way consumption habits have been dictated by, just fiscal policy, I guess, and the state of the economy. And I guess it's our job to adapt to that. It's basically our job as promoters, how how can we make it, and we can sit here and say, oh, sure, like, please just buy a ticket to my festival or club night or whatever, but come on, man, like, it's not fair to just get people to do that. We've got to kind of, like, give them a reason and a justifiable one rather than, we're going to die if we don't. You know, they're still giving money, they're still consumers at the end of the day, and they're going to act rationally off the back of that.
Yeah, I'll take that, absolutely. Yeah, cost of living and all that. I mean, I suppose it's true for venues, though. There's a cost of living crisis in venues, you know.
It works both ways.
Yeah. It just seems like it is one of those things right now where promoters are actually starting to cancel shows, you know, if they haven't sold enough tickets even a month out, you know.
Yeah, and now I guess it's what value can we add early on to make sure those tickets sell, and that's kind of a bit more of an esoteric question, but we need to go back and rethink, right, okay, they're paying for an experience, what can we make it, how can we make it so that when they do spend that 200 quid, how do we make it worth their while so they're not going on an EasyJet flight to Greece?
So I wonder whether it's worth mentioning just briefly the part that record labels used to play in all this that are not playing in all this at the moment. A lot of tours used to be part funded by record labels, and that would keep the price point of the tickets really quite low. And now, Simon, I mean, your price point, I mean, you know all about pricing up gigs. I mean, where are we at the moment on prices?
I'd put a counter to what you've said, which is, yes, labels, in inverted commas, funded tours, but they were also taking most of the band's earnings, so they didn't make anything. So now they're making most of their money from live. So labels are going, well, we're not making as much money as we were. So I don't think it's quite as simple as that. But I don't really know what the exact solution is. But I think with like that's metal festivals you've been doing at the 6.6. I think what you've done is you've gone, we're creating this amazing community of people. You know, if you come down, you're not going to know every band, but because of the vibe we've got, we're creating something that we know you're gonna love if you're into this scene.
I think over doing this for like 12 years or so, I built a bit of a reputation for sort of talent finding. So even if people didn't know the band on the bill, they knew that I would have picked them for a good reason. And like, I'd always have comments about people walking away from the festival finding 30 bands that blew their mind that they'd never heard of before. And I think that was kind of the reputation we built, was that you're guaranteed to find someone.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, years ago I did a club night just over the road at what's now it's Kiki now, isn't it? And yeah, we had a theme to what we were doing. We had the new up and coming indie bands coming through. We had a club night afterwards. And it didn't last forever, but there was a period where we were getting really good numbers in, even with smaller bands, because, yeah, it was that thing. People knew that when we booked a show in, that it'd be something that they definitely would want to see, and they'd get to go to the club afterwards as well. So, yeah, I think that's another route, is making sure that, yeah, get brand awareness, basically.
So we're coming to the end of the session. Can we have a bit of a roundup? One thing people can take away with them, maybe. Who wants to go first? Ian.
Okay, yeah. So I would try and be a voice of optimism here, because you know there are a huge amount of opportunities, and I would say the thing to take away, if you're an independent artist and you want to go and play places, you know, start locally. Don't go up and down the country just for the sake of it. You know, start locally and spiral and spread things around. But I would say, if you can't get in at the main venues because, say, they're block booked or something like that, which does happen, if you can't do that, put on your own gigs. There's plenty of community centres, churches, places like that have function rooms, and you can put things on there. Do it yourself. Go out there and do it. I've actually, on a separate note, I live on a farm just outside Cambridge, and I've actually, over 20 years of being there, I've actually built my own mini festival venue in my back garden. And I did that not just because I like the idea of living on a festival site, although I do, but because it actually gave me and my friends who were in the local scene somewhere to play. It played a huge role through COVID. Obviously, I don't say that officially, but it did, and it's brought a lot of people together, you know. But my and off the back of kind of the success that I've had, I'll try and be quick, sorry. All these things, going and doing all your DIY stuff, that is how I've managed to kind of gain a bigger and wider audience and connect with more people. So you have to think outside the box. That's what I would say.
Yeah, excellent. And any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say that going back to what we were talking about having our, basically creating our own tour circuits or whatever, I will say that if you are in, let's say you are an artist or you are working some capacity in live music, music weirdly runs on an economy of favours and reputation. When you are kind of getting into it, don't be cutthroat. Do nice things for nice people, and they'll do it back. And that's how relationships will form, and you can undercut a lot of the hard goings collectively.
That's the point I was going to make, was the music industry is pretty ruthless. And, if you do run your own events, you can learn how hard it is. And then I think as an artist, like, pop the bubble that you're going to make loads of money straight away, because you're just going to act like an idiot in front of promoters, expecting way too much. And, like, if you're trying to get into Leeds or Manchester or somewhere, maybe the first time is just take a hit, play it for a very low fee, and just get in there, build that relationship, be nice to the promoter, be nice to the bands, take it as an investment, take the hit, and just get your foot in the door. Because over the years, people up there will see you, and you can grow more, and you can come back and finally make your money. But everything you've got to kind of work for to get there. Like, the industry's there, but if you're starting a band today, the industry's already there. They don't owe you anything. You need to kind of prove yourselves to them, as harsh as that is. Like, you need to come in, you need to be nice, you need to be friendly, you've got to be easy to work with and professional. Like, people don't want to put out your fires as a brand new band. So if you're trying to start, like, just be helpful, be nice, and be humble. And I think people will see that.
Simon?
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'd say exactly that. I think, without using, I hate the word networking, but I think, go out, make friends with people, get to know each other, get to know promoters, and just be genuine. I think that's probably the biggest thing I'd ask from anyone, is just go and chat to people, go and talk to the promoter at a show and go, we'd love to have a gig. You may not get anything immediately, but if it's about remembering people. An agent at one of the major agencies said this to me. Remind us that you're here. Just don't leave it to us to remember you. Just keep in touch. Keep talking to us, and same with bands. Just make sure that everyone knows that you're there and that you're like you said, you're easy to work with, and and just be a nice human being. That's probably the best advice I'd give. I know some sides of our industry wouldn't always agree with me on that, but I think it definitely takes a long way.
Okay, I think we're all done. Yeah. So thanks very much, guys. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I would just like to donate to this panel another 3 minutes for any questions, because there might be some questions in the audience.
Okay, yeah. Sing it.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah. So I was thinking about asking you guys, there's a bunch of promoters here, it'd be very helpful if you could suggest some helpful hints and tips for bands that are up and coming. You've just done that. So on the other side of that coin, could you suggest some don't do this?
When you approach a promoter, don't sit and tell them the entire backstory about how you lost the bassist, then you found a drummer and he quit and all of that. Like, keep it concise. Like, as a promoter, I've been paying, £700-800 a song that I'm watching my headliner, and there's someone chatting in my ear about something that they're just starting, and it's like, I'm really trying to enjoy the experience I've paid for here. Like, I've always got the time to be like, yo, give me a card, take my email, I've got time of day for everyone. But when someone's in the job role and they're busy, it may be just to respect that, like, same with artists on tour, everyone wants to meet their favourite artist, but you don't see that they've been in the van for 20 days, that they're knackered, they haven't changed their clothes in 5 days, do you know what I mean? They haven't eaten for, since this morning, sort of thing. Like, give people their space and just be humble, be respectful, and just, make it short and sweet, I think. That's, no one's going to read a massive email either. Like, we just don't have time, I'd say.
Yeah, I get a lot of waffle in my inbox. I completely agree with that sentiment. Been times where I've been offered, even from, kind of like boutique agencies, they've sent me, 200 word paragraphs. Doesn't mean much. Like I'd say keep it short, keep it sweet, and for a lot of musicians, the proof is in the pudding. Show us the music, show us like the context of that music, where it's like, okay, it sounds kind of like this, this, and this. Here's what I've done before. Make it nice and short and sweet, and make it like a half a page CV, and that will probably go you a lot further, because a lot of promoters, some of them can't even read, let alone read half an email. So make it simple for them.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is if you're sending music or if you're putting a link up, put it to the right song. Put it to the song that's gonna like kick in almost straight away. Don't give the one with the 5-minute introduction with strings and all the rest of it. Well, you might do, but I'd try and go for the punchy one first.
Yeah, just to pick up on that quickly, it is really, it sounds really obvious, but if you're a metal band, don't try and get a gig at the folk festival in Cambridge. Yeah, it sounds obvious, but a lot of bands spend too much time focusing on gigs. They think, oh, that looks like a good gig, or that's a cool venue, we'll play there. But if you're not that type of band, it's not going to work for you anyway. Find the places that put on your stuff. The 6-6 is a perfect example in Cambridge. They want to be diverse, but they do have very much a rock and metal sensibility to them. But that's great if you're in a rock and metal band. You go there. So that's an obvious thing. Don't waste time on places that aren't going to be your audience anyway.
Yeah,
Simon?
I'd back that up entirely. The amount of times I've had bands email me about exactly that. I once had a band. I emailed them about a show that was directly relevant for them, and they sent me a really aggro email back going, well, we've split up now, but you never gave us any gigs. And I said, but that's because all of the gigs that you wanted to do were for shoegazing indie bands, and you're an emo band. And I have an emo gig for you. All right, okay, fine. Just be persistent, but not too persistent. Maybe check in with the promoter maybe once a month. I think that's probably just make sure they know you're there, and and don't attach MP3s to your email, because I hate that. link to your music on Spotify or wherever.
Yeah, streaming links, like my hard drive is only so big I can't download every album. But yeah, I think if you can, is the sort of body language of palm up or palm down, and like you want to be in a position where you're getting more offers than you're having to chase. Do you know what I mean? If you're not getting offers, then there's not much point in you begging and pleading, because it just looks like you're a desperate local band. I think focus on building yourself. I mean, you've got the internet now, and it's quite easy to make yourself look cool, make yourself look active, make yourself look like a professional band before you actually do a first show. And I think just making sure having all these little things in place before you go and hit someone up, just so that you don't look like a smaller band than you actually are. Like, I think talent's a huge thing, obviously, but there's so much more that goes into being a band now. And I think you really need to build the brand and make it look like something that's bookable and something that a promoter can make money on, or wants to have as part of their event. Do you know what I mean? You've got to bring something to the table.
I think what I'd want to add to that is there's been a lot of push, I'd say, in the wider music industry for basically to make data-driven decisions. Throw some promoters some numerics, like if you have booked your own gig, whether it's a club night or you've booked your band their own headline gig, keep a note of the numbers. How much was the bar spend? How many tickets did you end up selling? And you can use that and playing over to the promoter, and the promoter just sees instant value in it, especially if you're dealing with quite soulless venue bookers. And trust me, I've come across a lot of them. They couldn't know a good idea once if it hit them upside the head, or they're just completely oblivious to this kind of new undercurrent of music that might be growing in the UK. If you come to them with those numbers, they'll pay attention because they'll see the bottom line.
Yeah, you
can
can work. Promoters, when they've booked us, I've made sure to go straight to the event page, invite all the band members that are on that bill, and the promoter themselves, they've not even attended their own Facebook event page, and it's like, I want them to see that I'm actually actively promoting their show. I'm not just expecting them to do all the work. I think it makes a big effort. If you put a small ad on their show just to show that you're willing to work with them and build their show as well, I think it goes a long way, and chances are you will get invited back.
I think I'd agree with that, because the amount of bands I've had who don't accept event invites, or don't even put when you agree an announcement date and they don't even announce it on their own channels, that that happens more often than it should.
And you're sat there thinking, I want my money back.
Well, yeah.
Sorry. Sorry to rush you guys, but that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for all of your insightful information. Thank you to your questions.
Well, I suppose venues are nothing unless there's bands and unless there's people going to see them. So keep writing music. Write 100 tunes. One of them will be great. Just keep writing, keep going, and just keep trying to get gigs and sort your own gigs out. I think in a nutshell.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.